Life of love. Life of love. With Julie Hilsen.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Life of Love, where we gather every week to explore our hearts and to bring forth a message for the highest good. So, days that are giving us a little bumps or we're feeling low resource, there might be a soft landing and an open heart to give you some inspiration. And so this is why I'm very excited about this week's offering. We're bringing forth a lovely soul. Lindsay Shannon's coming to us from Idaho. She's a blessed person. She's been in the field of Reiki and energy healing. She's a psychic medium and a mentor to people to help find their purpose. And so I can't think of a better topic for life of love. I mean, what could be more inspiring than having a life of love with purpose? So I'm really excited to welcome you. Thanks, Lindsay, for being here on Life of Love.
Thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful intro.
My pleasure. That's easy. That was so easy. And I do want to shout out to the audience. Thank you guys for tuning in each week and for sharing these episodes. If you think of someone when we're talking, feel free to share. We're all adding to this grid of light. That's been strong in my consciousness lately, is that all of us working together, sharing inspiration adds to the light grid that I believe is around the earth and I believe can be seen in the galactic. And that might be part of our mission, is to just add to that light. And so if you're in this field with me, I honor your contribution, big and small. We're all doing something for this. Thank you. So, oh my gosh, Lindsay, it's not a lot of times that I get to talk to a Reiki energy healer. So I wanted to start out with, how did your trip start? You said that transformation can be a winding road, but when did you realize that your road was starting, that your trip was taking off? And, I just want to get some insight and have you share with the audience some of your beautiful story.
Yeah. Some of it is magical and some of it is very, realistic based. I struggled with depression for a while. I was in a pretty toxic relationship for quite a while. And I think, going through those things, you don't always know what it's leading up to, but I think I knew that something was starting. I ended the toxic relationship. And I think since it was so involved, like I got so absorbed into that. Once I stepped away from it, it cleared up all this space for me energetically. And so I think my senses kind of started opening up. I remember telling my friends, like my girlfriends at dinner one night, I'm like, I see this just portal of orange light. I don't know what's happening, but it's all out here, in my third eye, in my imagination, however you want to think about it. And it just felt like this sort of welcoming and exciting sort of energy. And I think so that was kind of my first inkling. Reiki was definitely, one of the next steps. I think as my senses started opening up, I had these, I would hear things in my room or see things as I was falling asleep at night, and nothing scary, just, like waterfalls or people chattering. And I think it was enough to open my curiosity. And so I remember looking into all the clair senses, Googling around, just trying to find whatever I could. And that led me to Reiki, actually. I think it was, I don't know, I attribute it to curiosity, because truthfully, it wasn't a moment of oh, I know exactly what to do next. It was just, okay, I know I have to do something next because this is just wild.
So that when you said that toxic relationship, I just pictured this big scab coming off your soul. It was just
yeah, that's what it felt like. It was definitely all encompassing. And I didn't even realize it until I stepped away, that I was constantly pouring energy into this person that was, I look at it now, I'm that was just an energy suck, a black hole, nothing was coming back to me. And so of course I got, I look at, I look at it now, everything happens for a reason, some way or another. And I'm sure my guides had a lot to do with that. But of course, I came out of that and was like, okay, what do I do with all of this energy that I freed up now? But yeah.
Yeah. And that you followed your curiosity, that's a huge thing. And knowing that those were signs, those were synchronicities. You weren't going crazy. That was something like your guides were tapping you on your shoulder. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely like I would say like a language that you kind of have to learn though, going through all of this. I don't know if you agree, but it definitely took me some time to realize like when and how they were speaking to me, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and I loved how you said it, your third eye or your imagination, because it's an intertwining of your imagination and your intuition, and just trusting that.
Yeah.
So, I think that's where it starts. Like you said, being curious and accessing your imagination, and when just taking that time, that quiet time to set aside and say, hey, I'm willing to see something. I'm willing to feel something. I'm here.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
how did you know to do that? Or was it when you started doing Reiki?
I think I started meditating first because I think to me that was like something I already knew existed, and it was kind of, I guess, like more easily accessible, so to speak. I knew that a lot of people meditated. I had never really incorporated it regularly, but it seemed, I don't know, it seemed to make sense at the time. Like, okay, if all of this stuff is coming through for me and I'm too busy trying to like juggle life stuff to like make sense of it, like, yeah, like you're saying, like maybe I just need to slow down, take the time and just listen. Um, Meditating seemed like more accessible. So I started meditating. I was getting visions. I remember I think thinking back now, one of the main, I guess, triggers or sort of like jumping off points, like accelerants, was I had a vision about, at the time I didn't know like who it was about. It was very symbolic, but it ended up being kind of this premonition about one of my coworkers passing. I think it was like 3 or 5 days ahead of time. And I kind of like pieced it together after that happened. I told a friend and she was like, oh my God, that's like, and she's not even super witchy or, spiritual, I would say, just, a friend that was willing to hear me out. And so I think that was good enough for me. It was like, okay, well, I've always found this very interesting. Like I believe that other people can do it. So like maybe this is something that I can work on and develop. And I think that was a big part of, beginning my journey. And I found myself like keeping him with me, like in the beginning steps for sure, like as part of my support system, spirit team. So that was
You connected with your coworker after he passed.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yes.
you were able to have insight into how it happened.
Well, it was a medical thing, so like we knew like how it happened, but I did end up talking with him about like his family and stuff, and I remember I couldn't be at his service. This was across the country, but my friend did end up relaying my dream or sort of vision. Like I forget how she worded it, but they had a little service for him at work, and she relayed that to everyone, and she was like, it was very well received and understood. So that felt pretty special afterwards.
Sounds like you work at a cool place.
Well, she did not ask me if she could do that, just for the record. I told her in confidence. She made the executive decision to share it with people, and it was fine. But
She was called.
yes, she's ridiculous. But
You're like, note to self.
Yeah, I know. I know. I got to be careful what I tell people now. No, I think, if we want to go into that too, like that was probably like a little bit of a learning moment for me too, because I wasn't used to people like seeing me in this light. Like I wasn't used to receiving that kind of attention. So that was probably like another, takeaway from that experience is like learning to allow people to see me in this way. Because it's not always comfortable, like especially when it has to do with the passing of somebody that you're close to, that's not always good news for people. So there's definitely a couple takeaways there.
Yeah. So in that weaving of your story, how do you let people know that their purpose might be something? Maybe how do you guide people to find their purpose when you're is it a intuition thing, or do you have a process, or you're a coach and you help people with this, but I'm always curious as to, do you, some people try to empty out everything in their mind to get to that space where they can get a message or to get a feeling. And then I've heard some people try to, create this cone and they connect with what the higher above them, whatever their fifth eye or spirit. But lately it's come to me that it might be inside us. So I'm just curious as to your process. Is it an emptying or is it an opening? I guess that's what I'm asking, or maybe both. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it probably incorporates both. My process is I don't know how similar I am to others and like other intuitives how they work, but I like to prep ahead of time. So like for sessions, I'll kind of like sit with myself. I'll sage, I'll do some, rituals to like get me centered. And then I would say it's more of an opening for me. Like I try and I don't know. I guess they kind of do both go hand in hand because I do try and quiet my mind and like push me out of the way. I should say. Maybe that sounds too aggressive. I try to step back um out of, the center of attention, so to speak, energetically, and then open up and try to let whatever needs to come through. So like my sessions with people aren't necessarily me telling them what potential I see in them. It's more so about letting messages come through from their spirit team and just being the medium or being the channel and telling them what I'm seeing and feeling come up, and then almost acting as like a counsel or like a counselor to just be like, okay, how does that sit with you? Or like, what sort of associations do you have with this? Or like, have you ever thought about this? This seems out of left field. I don't know what this is, and I think it just creates a sort of really meaningful conversation or like container to explore with somebody, and it allows them to kind of in turn open themselves up to different possibilities that maybe like they would love to do XYZ, but they haven't really ever seriously entertained it before because no one ever asked them about it. I'm a piece to the puzzle, but I wouldn't say like I provide the answers. Those come from somewhere else.
That makes sense. That it really does. And what a great gift to be like, to offer something and have that be a confirmation that, this person, maybe that as they were a child, they always wanted to, be around horses, or they always were drawn to painting, or, they have fond memories of, finger painting or whatever it is. And then you can draw on that and say, hey, this is still in your field, and you validate a dream or something that might have been pushed away. Getting back to curiosity again, it's like, are you curious about what that could look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Or even just like, to use your word, validation, like validate something that maybe somebody didn't realize or ever consider to be as big of a deal as it could be. Like, people push things down all the time and make them, and can, on top of that, justify to themselves why it shouldn't be a big deal when maybe it could be, and it would make you happy, so it's just really interesting to see all of that play out, because everybody's different. I see all kinds of things, and some things make sense to me, some things don't, but usually it makes sense to them, which is what we're
Right, because how could you know? How could you know what's going to make sense to them?
right.
I mean, like you prepared, but you don't know them. You haven't followed them around or,
Right.
went to high school with them or anything.
Right. Even friends, like I've done readings for friends, and I'm like, have you ever thought about like teaching yoga classes outside? And like, we've never talked about it, but it's just like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about that last week, and I thought maybe I could do that or whatever. But yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as, somebody mentioning it in passing and then it getting foo-fooed or, oh, that's not a job. That's not occupation. That's just a hobby or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, more and more that I'm alive, I realize that hobbies tend to make the best jobs. The people that are living in their hobbies are the happiest. I don't know. It's like,
Yeah. Well, it's, like you have to pay the bills and you have to get the kids places and things, of course, like reality is there, but truthfully, like you can do whatever you want with your life. Like at the end of the day, like we all have free will. You can change your mind at any time. So I think just reminding people of that, no matter in what, like in a big or small capacity, it usually helps a little bit.
I love that. And, that could be a gift of the volatility of everything right now. Companies are changing, positions are changing. I would never wish anyone to lose their position. But if it happens, it also, just like your breakup freed you from a toxic relationship, it could free you from a toxic job. And maybe if we could look at it in a lens of curiosity and opportunity, like you said, but we have to pay our bills. We got to take our kids. There's certain things, but maybe it would help prioritize or, you could spend your time on things you like instead of maybe catching up on the social media feed or, like, is that, to me, it's always like, is that serving me? Is that serving my purpose? Or is this just a habit that I happen to have that I might be able to do something else with that 10 minutes?
Right.
Yeah. It's like, I'm curious about the possibility.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's so pretty. It's so beautiful. And another thing we talked about before we started recording was, how the divine feminine could weave into this. And so that's sort of on my heart too, because I just think that it helps women be empowered if they can tune into the divine feminine. I'm just wondering, with your intuition and your gifts that you've had, has the divine feminine come forward? Or what are some ways you can incorporate the divine feminine in your everyday life where you could feel more connected to your divinity and to your sisterhood? Because even if we incarnated as a man at a point, we're here as women, and this is the sisterhood that we're, if we're born, everyone's born one way or the other, unless, there's a very small percentage, and I don't want to get into gender identity, and all of us have feminine and masculine in us, but if you were born as a woman, you identify as a woman, how would you recommend, connecting with that sisterhood?
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, like gender is one thing, right? I think of masculine and feminine as energies, and we all kind of have different varying combinations of the two. This year, actually, one of my intentions for 2024 was to lean further into my feminine, because I think, maybe the breakup, but like how I was raised and like and then like the subsequent expectations that I created for myself were very I would say, masculine. I've been single more than I've been in relationships, so I've had to like provide for myself financially, which is very masculine, like go, go, go. Like, I don't work in a very creative field for my 9-to-5 job. I'm an accountant by day. So that's, again, numbers, very black and white, not a lot of creative sort of feminine energy going on there either. So I wanted to make it a point to, lean further into my feminine and what I've, at least my experience with it, allowing yourself to rest is a huge one. Because I think when you rest, you become more open energetically to things, ideas, inspirations that maybe wouldn't necessarily be able to like kind of make its way through if your mind is busy elsewhere all the time. A lot of self-love and learning what that looks like for you, because I know people kind of preach self-care all the time and people do skincare, baths, habits, all kinds of things. But I think defining what that looks like for you and maybe even how it looks day to day, week to week, month to month, because I know that my habits tend to change. Sometimes I want to take a bath and sometimes I need a nap and sometimes, I need to meditate. It just depends. So really getting to know yourself and what feels good in the moment, taking care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually. I do a lot of yoga. I think that helps, and just weightlifting too, anything to take care of your body. Good. Yeah. I mean, obvious. I think some of it's obvious, right? Like just general, like taking care of your health, but really like slowing down, softening. I think you mentioned sisterhood. I know that a lot of us may relate to the idea of being conditioned to feel competition with other women at some point in life. I think I've managed to get to a point where I'm happy with who I am. Obviously I'm human. I have my moments of jealousy and things like that, but I've found like it really helps me to like catch myself. Like if I'm on social media and I find myself somewhere or looking at someone's photos where it's not sitting well with me, either I'm like jealous or upset that like someone's leaving me out, whatever like feelings come up, try and reinvent those and kind of, like alchemize it into some positivity of like, oh, well, I really love her outfit, or it looks like they had a great time. And that's not to like bypass emotions. It's more so just to like kind of rewire my brain a little bit. Because social media can kind of wreak havoc if you let it, but
It's fair. It's so fair. Oh my gosh. You touched on so many things. And what occurred to me when you're talking about the things we do for self-care, and I think it's like this lens, if you can say, okay, I'm going to take a bath for self-care. And in this bath, I'm going to connect to the water, because water has been a sacred feminine symbol for so long. Like that was what the women did. They went to the well and retrieved the water, and we've been stewards of water throughout history. And so when we take a bath, it's more than a bath. It's a feminine ritual. If you say, I'm connecting to my sisters in this bath, and that the whole thing about social media and not feeling included, it's like that myth of separation, right? And so that comes at us, and it's like, okay, I'm feeling the myth of separation, but how can I heal that? How can I can say, yeah, everyone can feel alone. Well, I'm going to reach out to somebody. I'm going to make a phone call. That feeling of being left out, maybe that's a trigger to say, well, how am I leaving someone else out? Or maybe, how can I heal this in a conscious way versus being upset? And I get it. I've done it. I've done it, but like, well, that's really nice. I wish they would have called me to go celebrate that birthday, and it's like, but I'm really busy and I'm out of town a lot. So I can't really expect, people to call me all the time to do something because I'm not always around. I'm like, well, maybe I need to reach out and organize something. And just that framing of it. And then even like when you get a facial, when you go in and be like, oh, I'm going to connect, usually it's another woman giving you a facial, and just honoring that woman's expertise. And I think the more we celebrate how women show up in our lives and their beauty and their devotion, the more it sort of comes back, and it becomes this beautiful compounding, celebrating being a woman. So yeah, the things you said were so wonderful, and I'm like, oh yeah, we go through these things, and it can be getting your hair done, or it can be, okay, I'm going to come out of here a goddess. Like, I'm going to ask for what I want with my hair, and my stylist, she's amazing, and Jasmine's going to make me a goddess. I'm going to walk out of there, like it gets to be really fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think like that's a good point to be made too. Like the divine feminine to me is a lot of receiving and a lot of being open to things. It actually reminded me when you said getting a facial. I went for a massage one time with a couple girlfriends, and one of the ladies, I think looking back, she probably was into Reiki. It was before my certification, but she must have picked up on some sort of like, I don't know, I guess intuitive sort of energy. And she was like, do you mind if I like basically give you a reading? Like, cause she was like, she sees colors on people's auras and things like that. It was so cool. And I feel like if you walk around through life with a sort of like welcoming energy and like able to hold space for people, or just, just being receptive to things like that, it allows for like deeper connections in places that you might not even expect.
That's so beautiful. It is so beautiful. I had one, you just made me think of this massage I had, and I was in the massage table too, and she was on my crown, and I don't know if she's doing cranial sacral, but all of a sudden I was like, I just saw a huge beam of light. And she's like, oh, interesting. It was like,
She's like, I knew it.
Yeah. So, and I think it's like taking a step back and just like seeing that person, recognizing their divinity. So I love that came up, and I'm so tickled that that was your focus for the year, and here we are. We have a couple months left of the year, and I'm glad that I was able to bring that forward.
Yeah,
and affirm your goddess, your inner feminine.
totally. Love that.
So see it. Oh my gosh, we're coming up on our time. This has gone so fast, but I was wondering, are you do you have spaces in your coaching, or can people go to your website, or how can they reach you?
Yeah, my website is the best place. I have all of my offerings up there. I'm hosting a wellness retreat in Costa Rica in April, which I would love to have anybody that's into it. There's still spots left, but you can find that information on my website as well. And yeah, I'm on Instagram, Ineffable Alchemy. Feel free to message me whenever. I'm happy just to chat about anything and everything.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.